You've heard it, maybe recently. Maybe it's been sitting in the back of your head for months. Something she said that didn't sit right. A comment that stung a little too much to be a joke. A pattern of words that keeps repeating, and every time it does, you feel a little smaller than you did before. You're not overreacting. That's the first thing I want you to hear. Because the moment a man starts questioning whether he's overreacting to how he's being spoken to, that's usually the moment he's already been in it too long. Here's what nobody tells men about relationships. The warning signs aren't always explosive. They're not always obvious. Sometimes they're quiet, casual, wrapped in a laugh, or delivered mid-argument like it's nothing. And because they come from someone you care about, someone you chose, you rationalize them. You file them away. You tell yourself it was a bad day. But words reveal values, and values don't lie. Now, everything I'm about to cover applies to any relationship dynamic. These patterns aren't exclusive to women, and men aren't immune to them either. But if you're a man who's been on the receiving end of these specific things from a woman you're with, this is for you. Today, we're talking about 5 specific things, 5 categories of statements that tell you something important about where a relationship is actually headed, not where you hope it's going, where it's actually going. And if you're hearing these things regularly, staying isn't loyalty. It's slowly losing yourself. First, let's start with the one that most men dismiss entirely, and shouldn't. Number 1, disrespectful and demeaning statements. There's a difference between a woman who's angry and a woman who's contemptuous. Anger says, "What you did hurt me." Contempt says, "You are beneath me." Contempt sounds like this: "You're so sensitive. Other guys wouldn't make such a big deal of this. I can't believe you actually think that. You're being pathetic." These aren't fight words, these are diminishment words. And there's a critical difference. Every healthy relationship has conflict. 2 people, different backgrounds, different needs, conflict is inevitable. But the way conflict is conducted reveals everything about how your partner actually sees you. Psychologist John Gottman studied couples for over 40 years, one of the longest-running relationship studies ever conducted. And what he found was one single predictor of relationship failure more reliable than any other. Not conflict frequency, not financial stress, not even infidelity. It's contempt. Consistent contempt, eye rolls, dismissive language, mocking tone, is the single greatest indicator that a relationship is headed toward breakdown. So, when she calls you pathetic for expressing emotion, when she mocks your ideas in front of other people, when she uses your insecurities, things you shared in vulnerable moments, as punchlines in arguments, that's not her having a bad day. That's her showing you how she sees you. And here's the part that's hard to hear. You teach people how to treat you by what you continue to accept. Every time you absorb a demeaning comment and say nothing, you've just confirmed that the cost of contempt is 0. Number 2, emotional withdrawal and detachment. This one is quieter, more insidious, because it doesn't announce itself the way cruelty does. Emotional withdrawal sounds like this: "I'm fine," said in a tone that is clearly not fine, but refuses to engage. Silence that lasts days. Physical presence with emotional absence. The feeling of lying next to someone and being completely alone. Now, everyone needs space sometimes. That's healthy. That's normal. And some people withdraw because of their own unresolved pain, past trauma, or struggles they haven't learned to communicate yet. That's real, and it deserves honest conversation before conclusions are drawn. But what we're talking about is something different. A pattern. A consistent retreat behind walls every time real intimacy or real conflict arises. A partner who has stopped letting you in and shows no willingness to work on that, even when you've named it directly. Here's why this matters. Emotional availability isn't optional in a relationship. It's the relationship. Without it, what you have is cohabitation, shared logistics, 2 people managing a household who happen to occasionally share a bed. That's not partnership. That's roommates with history. And the cruelest part of emotional withdrawal is what it does to the person on the receiving end. You start working harder, trying more, being more attentive, more patient, more understanding, trying to earn back access to someone who used to give it freely. You become anxious. You become someone you don't recognize, all trying to reach a person who, whether by choice or by their own unresolved pain, has stopped letting you in. Either way, you're the one paying the price. Say this with me. Emotional unavailability is not something I can love someone out of. Because here's where it gets harder. What happens when you try to talk about it? When you actually bring up how you're feeling? Number 3. Dismissal of your feelings and needs. You're too sensitive. Here we go again. I don't have time for this right now. You always make everything about you. Every one of those sentences does the same thing. It closes the door on your emotional reality and frames your need for connection as a character flaw. Here's what I want you to understand. In a healthy relationship, your feelings don't need to be perfectly rational to deserve acknowledgement. You don't need to build a legal case for why something bothered you. Your partner's job isn't to agree with everything you feel. It's to take your experience seriously enough to engage with it honestly. When someone consistently dismisses your feelings, either they genuinely lack the emotional capacity to hold space for someone else, which is a real limitation with real consequences, or they've decided your emotional needs are an inconvenience to be managed rather than a person to be heard. Either way, you have a problem. And the long-term effect of having your feelings consistently dismissed is something most men don't talk about. You stop sharing. You stop bringing things up. You start handling everything internally because you've learned that bringing it to her just creates more pain than it resolves. You become emotionally self-sufficient by necessity, not by choice. And slowly, without either of you necessarily intending it, the intimacy dies. But here's where it gets worse, because some of what you're hearing isn't just dismissal. Some of it is something more calculated than that. Number 4. Manipulative and controlling language. You've been told that manipulation in relationships is obvious, that you'll see it coming, that controlling behavior announces itself. Stop. That's not how it works. Manipulative language is designed to be invisible. It's constructed to make you feel like the problem while she maintains plausible deniability. And it's far more common than most people admit. Here's what it actually sounds like. If you really loved me, you wouldn't need to spend time with your friends. That sentence just made your friendships a test of your love, without her ever directly telling you to cut them off. Fine, do whatever you want. I just thought I mattered to you. That sentence just made a reasonable request from you into evidence that she doesn't matter, without her ever engaging the actual request. Every other guy I've dated understood this about me. That sentence just introduced a comparison designed to make you compete for approval you should never have had to earn. These sentences have something in common. They reframe your legitimate needs as a tax on her. They make reasonable behavior, wanting time with friends, making a personal decision, having a preference, into relationship crimes. And they do it without ever making a direct accusation that you could actually address. Controlling language works the same way. It doesn't say, "You can't do that." It says, "I can't believe you'd want to." It doesn't forbid, it guilts. It doesn't restrict directly, it makes the cost of your freedom your partner's visible suffering. And here's the part that trips most good men up. Stop. Sometimes, not always, but in genuinely toxic dynamics, the person making you feel like the controlling one is actually the one doing the controlling. If you're regularly accused of things you genuinely aren't doing, and those accusations escalate every time you try to assert a reasonable boundary, that pattern is worth examining honestly. Because an accusation isn't evidence, and guilt is not the same as wrongdoing. Repeat after me. Guilt is not the same as wrongdoing. Number 5. Repeated expressions of uncertainty and indecision. Here's the conventional wisdom. Uncertainty in a relationship means she needs more time, more reassurance, more patience. Give her space and she'll come around. Stop. That's only half true, and the half that isn't true has kept men in holding patterns for years. There's a version of uncertainty that's genuine. Early stages, real-life complications, processing past hurt. That's real, and it deserves patience. But there's another version that looks like this. Months in or years in, and she still can't tell you where this is going. She's hot one week and cold the next. She talks about the future and then pulls back when it gets real. She keeps you close enough that you stay, but never commits fully enough that you're secure. In some cases, particularly when this pattern has continued for months with no real movement despite honest conversation, that's not genuine uncertainty. That's someone keeping options open while yours quietly close. Only you can assess honestly which situation you're actually in. But if you've named it, discussed it, and nothing has changed, the pattern itself is the answer. A person who wants to be with you makes you feel it consistently. Not perfectly, nobody is perfectly consistent, but the direction is clear. The intention is clear. You don't spend months trying to read signals from someone who genuinely wants to be with you. And the cruelest thing about prolonged uncertainty is what it does to your self-perception. You start wondering what's wrong with you, why you're not enough to make her decide. You work harder, show up better, become more, all trying to tip a scale that she's choosing to keep balanced. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. The patterns underneath all 5. Let's pull back for a second, because these 5 things aren't random. They share a common thread. Each one of them, contempt, emotional withdrawal, dismissal, manipulation, prolonged uncertainty, does the same thing to the man on the receiving end. It erodes his sense of self, quietly, consistently, until he's spending more energy managing the relationship than living his actual life. That's the real cost nobody calculates, not the arguments, not the bad days. The slow, cumulative cost of being in a relationship where you are perpetually slightly less than enough. And here's what I want to say directly to you if you're recognizing these patterns right now. The fact that you are still here, still trying, still caring, still showing up, that's not weakness. That's actually the thing that makes you worth keeping. The problem is that your consistency, your patience, your willingness to work at it has been treated as a resource to draw from rather than a quality to honor. What toxic communication actually costs you? Healthy relationships have a baseline. That baseline is simple. Both people feel fundamentally safe to be themselves. Not perfectly comfortable always, not conflict-free, but safe. Safe to express a need without it being weaponized. Safe to have a bad day without being mocked for it. Safe to be uncertain without being punished for it. When that baseline is missing, when you're constantly calibrating what you say, managing her reaction, editing yourself before you speak, you're not in a relationship. You're in a performance. And no man should have to audition daily for the right to be himself in his own relationship. What mutual respect actually looks like. It's worth naming, because sometimes when you've been in a dynamic long enough, you forget what normal feels like. Mutual respect looks like this. She disagrees with you and says so, directly, honestly, without contempt. She's upset and tells you why, instead of withdrawing and making you guess. She has needs and asks for them, without manufacturing guilt if you can't immediately meet them. She's uncertain about something and talks it through with you, instead of keeping you in limbo while she decides. That's not a fantasy. That's a functional adult relationship. And it exists. It's available to you, but not from someone who consistently does the 5 things we just covered. The decision. Here's what I actually mean when I say leave her immediately. I don't mean make an impulsive decision after one bad argument. I don't mean there's no room for growth or honest conversation. Name what you're seeing. Give her a genuine chance to respond to it. Have the direct conversation, clearly, calmly, without ultimatums. What happens after that will tell you everything you need to know. But if these patterns are consistent, if they've been named and they continue, if you've expressed what you need and the response is more dismissal, more withdrawal, more manipulation, then staying isn't hope, it's self-abandonment. You deserve a relationship where you're not managing someone else's emotional volatility at the expense of your own stability, where your feelings are met with curiosity instead of contempt, where the person who chose you keeps choosing you, clearly, consistently, without you having to wonder. That's not too much to ask. That's the minimum. And if what you're in right now can't meet that minimum, after honest conversation, after genuine effort, then the smartest, most self-respecting thing you can do is stop negotiating with your own worth. If this landed, if you felt something shift while listening, share this with a man who needs to hear it, because too many good men are sitting in relationships right now wondering what's wrong with them, when the answer has nothing to do with them at all. Like this if it resonated, subscribe because there's more ahead, and it only gets more honest from here. The right relationship won't make you question your worth every single day. And the moment you truly believe that, everything changes.